Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome along to episode 90 of the Sofa Manager Scottish Football Podcast. And it is indeed the episode I'm sure many Scottish football fans will be waiting for a number of reasons, either to laugh at this football team or also to express their anger. So tonight's special episode is going to be the Falkirk season review 2020-2021. Now, we haven't done one of these for a couple of years, so if we cast our mind back to the last one, we'll find the theme music to that as "Oh, I Do Want to Be Beside the Seaside." How little, in fact, has changed over those two seasons. So tonight, we are going to be discussing the season that Falkirk Football Club have had in this truncated COVID time. So we'll be discussing the highs and the lows. You can decide which one will be the main points of discussion, but expect some rants, some quizzes, and maybe a few giggles along the way as well. A reminder that Sofa Manager, the Scottish Football Podcast, can be found on all good audio podcasting services, and if you want to watch us in person, you can do so on YouTube. This week's Falkirk season review is brought to you by sofamanager.co.uk and their in-depth season review written by our very own Editor-in-Chief, John Brown. So I'll introduce you first, John. Hi, thank you for being with us. Are you looking forward to sharing your views with us this evening?
It's time for some catharsism, I think.
Yes.
Get some stuff off my chest.
We look forward to hearing it. John, of course, was the man who called for more emotional investment at the famous Paul Hartley era Q&As. So his voice is obviously very valued in the community. And alongside him, it is Mambo12345. How many can Partick score? It is Brother Andrew. Hello, brother.
Hello.
You've been an avid subscriber to a lot of the games in the run-in, haven't you? You've been a bit of involved in quite a few virtual away days, so to speak.
I wasted my money, yeah.
I was about to ask you
That's the best way to put it.
However,
there was a lot of different, especially I think the Peterhead was the worst game because one of the seagulls kept coming in and out the camera and they thought it was a ball, so it kept following the seagulls.
that was maybe for the best. That was maybe
Probably.
Anyway, without further ado, and myself, what was my intro phrase? Usually, I had one. I forget. The partisan devil's advocate for this evening's affair. The neutral Aberdeen fan, predominantly, who's watched 1.5 Falkirk games this season, so anything I say you take with a grain of salt. Paul. So, without further ado, let's get straight into things, shall we? Okay, so the roller coaster ride begins. Let's start with some opening statements. John, sum up in a couple of sentences for me how this season's gone for you.
Just a few sentences.
Just a few sentences to start us off.
Where to begin, man? Where to begin? Let's see. Terrible management decisions, both from Miller McCracken and from Gary Holt coming at the end of the season. Shocking performances, huge expectations on these guys, and they came up short, desperately short. Some really kind of anonymous positions in the board. You have a guy who is all singing and all dancing during the summer and then has disappeared, and now we got a kind of open apology, which is just full of excuses. So it's a bit of a disaster. Glad to see the back of the season, and we shall see what happens over the summer, I think, as to how I feel about the club, I suppose. And we'll take it from there.
The season tickets will still wander out the door, I'm sure. Andrew, how would you sum up the season in a few sentences?
I'd probably say it started off below average and then we did have a chance to take the league. So I'd probably say we started off about there, peaked about there, and then absolutely plummeted.
Can I just say that's a really good visualisation for the audio listeners, Andrew. Thank you for that.
All right.
He was raising his hands halfway through there. Can I ask you, Andrew, as well, what are those things on your shelf behind you?
Something that Falkirk's not had in many years.
You saw my joke before it came. You saw my joke before it came.
I wasn't.
For the purposes of the audio listeners, if you can just imagine Oblivion, the roller coaster, that's probably what Andrew was just describing there for you. So that's as good as you're going to get.
There we go. I think from my sort of partisan view of the season, I mean, I only sat down and watched one full 90 minutes, and that was against Forfar, which was a draw. And Forfar were by far the worst team in the league. So that never boded well for their single match performances. But genuinely shocked as to how the season ended. I honestly thought they would have scraped into the playoffs. They would have been punted out in the first round, but when the Airdrie score and things came through, my jaw was. I had to phone John immediately because I was like, "This has not happened. This has not happened." Of course, I had to wind up Andrew, but that was the natural way of things. But I never thought we'd get to that Falkirk would get to this point. So plenty to discuss. And where I'd like to start is, despite being the partisan person, I am actually the most dedicated Falkirk fan and the person that was last to attend a live Falkirk match. Is that not correct?
You probably were. I mean, I've been in London for 2.5 years.
I don't see that strictly as an excuse. I actually went to Kirkcaldy one fateful evening was it been February? February,
I think.
February, and watched them play a 1-1 draw with Wraith Rovers. Now, casting my mind back to the game, I actually, they came away with a 1-1 draw against Wraith. Right? Now, I thought for swathes of that game, Wraith looked better. For swathes of that game, Falkirk looked better. But nonetheless, if we compare the two sides this season, obviously the season was truncated last season, Wraith have gone on to, currently they're going into the semi-final of the Premiership playoffs, yeah?
Yep.
Had an absolutely fantastic season, and Falkirk were only, I think, a point behind at that point, with many of the fans convinced that they were going to be overhauled. And at that time, under Miller and McCracken. So, let's play out some hypothetical events. 2 questions for you. If they'd seen out that season, would they find themselves in the Championship now? And do we think Miller and McCracken at that time was a good appointment?
You want to take that one, Andrew?
Right. In terms of the season, I think we might have had slightly different players if we went up. So I think it could have been a different story. But if we're going to stick with the team that we have right now, I think we would have been there or thereabouts of going down or in the playoffs to go down. And I think Miller McCracken, once he got put in, didn't seem like the worst idea in the world. I mean, going to the development games, watching Lee Miller at the side, he didn't really do much for them, but again, you can't really judge him off of that. And then the dual managers, 2 players that we liked as players when they were in, whether you liked them or not, but I think most people did. They came across quite well. And I think it was one of those, it's more like, I don't want to say a publicity stunt, but it kept most people happy because it was 2 names that they knew and they'd already established themselves in some way.
I would tend to agree. I mean, if you take it back to that sort of season, the truncated season, I don't think we would have overhauled Wraith. I think just the way that season was kind of going to go with Miller and McCracken in charge, if you take on the current trajectory, that could well have played out. I do, however, think we would have finished second, probably fairly comfortably, and I would have fancied our chances as well in the playoffs. I cannot for the life of me remember who finished 9th roughly that season in the Championship. I have a funny feeling it was Queen of the South, with Partick being relegated out of the 2. Now, granted, watching Stephen Dobie score another hat-trick against Falkirk wouldn't have been ideal, which would have happened. It's inevitable. I mean, he paid for our season tickets one season. I remember that game.
Yep.
The season we got relegated. So, that was a potential. But, there was the chance, and I think that was the kind of thing. I also agree with your kind of comments regarding the appointment of Miller and McCracken. They were 2 familiar faces to Falkirk fans. They had a lot of goodwill going into the job. We all knew they were rookie managers. Lee Miller had done a bit of kind of youth coaching. I think McCracken had been a first team coach, I think, up in Peterhead or Montrose. So they were starting their careers in that kind of area. So you kind of give them the kind of benefit of the doubt for a while. It became very apparent very quickly, however, they just weren't up to the task. Quite whether it's because the position Falkirk's in, it's a big club with a lot of pressure. You're expected to win the league. I don't know if they were cut out for that. Maybe if they move into the League 2, pick up a kind of mid-table team there, and then they start their managerial careers down there, that's fine. it was just a bad time to join Falkirk. That's a struggle for them. The writing was on the wall, certainly through the kind of Christmas time this season. They probably should have been let go before. I think I said my article around about kind of December time, late December. They were in a kind of poor kind of run of results, a couple of draws and defeats, and the performances were absolutely insipid, really, really poor.
Yeah.
I think at that point you were going, this has to stop, and something else has to come in at that point.
I did read the word insipid in your article. I wondered whether that would come up again. So credit to your high school English teacher there. I think it's interesting in terms of when I was thinking about this, how much of a stamp do you think they were able to actually get on that side? Because I know that in the summer there was big transitions in terms of the structure of the club. Gary Holt came in as the sort of director of football kind of around about that time.
He came in about halfway through the season.
Yeah, he was later on. Miller and McCracken had free rein really during the summer. It was their decisions, the signings that were made. So they have no excuses.
Well, presumably with great input of the director of football as well.
But he wasn't in at the time.
He wasn't there at the time.
Okay, so we can't quite blame him yet. Okay.
He came in during lockdown.
Yep.
See,
which was bizarre. But
for me, I kind of found it bizarre to bring back a director of football. But if you are going to have a director of football, I think that works well under younger management who perhaps are needing a bit of guidance, who are perhaps needing a bit of advice in terms of who to sign and things like that. Because certainly, I think the quality of the squad last season was much better than the quality of the squad this season. And I don't think many of the signings panned out at all. I mean, Declan McManus, for example, went out and they did replace him with Cal Morrison, which was, like for like. But beyond that, kind of very, very lackluster.
And mostly they've replaced him with Aidan Keena. Because I think Morrison was more signed as a winger.
Yeah, Keena and Dowds came in as the kind of striking options. You're right, though, as a kind of marquee player, what McManus was, you'd be looking at Callum Morrison and Blair Alston as well. That's the kind of comparison as kind of your kind of star player. That star has fallen dramatically, but that was almost the kind of like for like in terms of their influence in the team, and it's just obviously not panned out. The squad has regressed massively.
Okay. Well, we'll get to that. We'll pick up on some players as we go. So first of all, I think the only positives we can draw from this season are possibly some of the cup performances. Now, I was quite excited because I was just reading the stats as we came into this thinking, wow, Falkirk beat Kilmarnock 3-0. I don't really remember that happening. But John, you pointed out to me as to why they might have beaten them 3-0.
Yeah, I mean, at the beginning of the season, it was I think Kilmarnock in particular, and St Mirren had really sort of COVID central. So they had their games kind of avoided 3-0 wins. I think it was for Falkirk and Dunfermline. Right. If memory serves, both got default 3-0 wins against Kilmarnock. So it looks better than it was. In fact, it was probably our best result of the season.
See, I was about to say it kind of tarnishes things because they went through as pretty much the lowest side to qualify out of the Betfred group stages. They, I think they still solidly beat Dumbarton in those group stages, a feat which I don't think they managed for the rest of the season. 2-0 loss to Dunfermline, but I think they lost like a couple of second half goals because that was on telly, wasn't it?
Yeah,
it was on Alba or
Premier Sports.
Yeah.
And then beat by Rangers. Was it Rangers? Yes.
Yeah, Rangers at home.
When it resumed. That didn't go that well. Nor did the Scottish Cup game against Celtic, but I don't think you can really take too much from that.
I think, the Falkirk Rangers one, I wasn't, we did get beat 4-0, but I wasn't angry for the fact that we never just sat in, because they actually came out and tried to play against them, and there was a few chances where we could have got a goal or two. Not saying we could have won it, definitely not, but you could just tell Rangers were just head and shoulders because they were full of confidence. And especially against Falkirk, you don't exactly come into it fearful of Connor Salmon.
I mean, I would actually say two of their better performances this season have came against Rangers and Celtic, which is a really bizarre thing to happen. If you take the Rangers game, it was a 4-0 win for Rangers. No worries at all, and they were hardly kind of threatened. but we had a bit of kind of spirit about us. There was a bit of kind of fight. There was a kind of semi-attempt to get kind of forward. Likewise at Parkhead, it was obvious we were going to just effectively park the bus, and it was up to Celtic to try and break us down. And they did on numerous occasions. They could have won in double digits, but they didn't. And you did again get the same kind of feel that there was a bit of kind of camaraderie kind of coming into the team, and that should have been something we could have built on. It clearly never happened. But it was bizarre. I mean, obviously all players raise their games against better opposition, and you kind of wonder if the kind of squad only really they could only be bothered with the big games, and that kind of thing, and the rest it was almost they went into sort of League One games as a formality. They should be in that kind of, they should be playing at this level. That kind of thing is a terrible attitude to have.
I think it's interesting that you bring up the mentality thing, because there were the period at the start of the season when they were chasing Cove down. The results were being churned out during that period, and they did get to a point where they were 8 points ahead of everyone else at 1 point, 9 points ahead, and that's when things took a major turn.
Yep.
And the pressure was maybe starting to tell. And one thing I've been chatting about is that Falkirk now very much feels like it's got a bad smell about the place, in terms of, well, not literally, I can't speak for that, but in terms of just success and winning. And after a while, once you lose that, it's kind of hard to get that mentality back. And I think one of the problems I was thinking of in terms of the squad is there are not many players in that squad that have been promoted, in recent history. There's not many people who have actually been through the battles and things. And obviously that comes from a number of places. That comes from the management, that comes from the board. And I think that's something that's really, really difficult to regain as a football club. What would you say to that?
Yeah, I think, especially with a bunch of players you had, you are right in terms of how many of them have actually been promoted. Because Connor Salmon at some point might have, maybe. Don't really think so. Cal Morrison's never really fully played first team. Charlie Telfer, Aidan Connolly, both injured for the majority. And I think Charlie Telfer especially made a huge difference in terms of the Arbroath game, the 4-1 straight after. So that was when we were still kind of climbing. But I think as soon as we lost him, that was our season done, because he was the only midfielder that you'd see that would bring the ball out. Because you had Gomez and Alston who'd just stay next to each other. Or sometimes Alston would go, but it was very rare. Whereas Telfer would try and play it out, keep the ball, and then he'd drive us up. But as soon as he went out injured, I think that was us done.
I mean, I would agree with you. If Charlie Telfer had stayed fit and Paul Dixon had stayed fit as well, the two of them, then I don't think we would have had the bottle crash as badly as it did. You've got to kind of consider that Falkirk, whether we're getting the results, no problem. Right, the performances were dreadful. Partick was kind of hand in hand. Their results were dreadful and their performances, because their squad was depleted. They came in after the kind of COVID break, had done some fantastic kind of recruiting. A couple of really good players came in. Tidser, and I think Joe Carlo as well, I think came in on loan. So two really experienced players, and that propelled themselves up the league. So I think they would have caught us regardless. I think they had at least one game against us, maybe two. So there's a 6 point swing. Falkirk coming back out, if it weren't that great, losing Charlie Telfer, losing Paul Dixon as well, that was the absolute calamity waiting to happen. That caused a lot of problems.
But I think with Dixon, he does get a lot of stick, and don't get me wrong, he does make mistakes. But
he's not a left back anymore. That's the problem. He's not going to like it.
I mean, he reminds me slightly of Muirhead, just for his mentality. He can put a cross in. Don't get me wrong, he can get it wildly wrong. It's either it's a good cross or it's just horrendous. Or if he gets the ball at left back and there's not a pass on, he'll just do the classic curl it up the wing and then see if anyone runs for it.
Aye, that's been the Falkirk tactical season as well. It's just lump it long.
Yep.
Very little going through the midfield of that, because you could argue there's no midfield to be had. You're kind of hoping for Connor Salmon, who despite every kind of co-comms that's been on Falkirk TV saying, "Oh, he's a big lad, he should be able to jump and head that." No, he can't. He can't. He's never done that in his career. He wants it 2 feet, he has to be an inch perfect pass, and then he'll take it from there. If it's anything beyond that, he hasn't got a hope.
I think he got 4 goals total this season.
I mean, that's shocking. Like,
for your main striker.
I don't like to say it, but towards the end of the season he looked better, but I don't know if that was because everyone looked worse.
It's probably that. I think he was kind of his performances were consistently poor. I think the really kind of interesting thing for the season as well is we've kind of mentioned Carl Morrison a few times, is it became quite apparent he was going to be the star man and the only man for Falkirk to produce anything.
Yep.
And you see it through the season. All you had to do was put 2 or 3 men on Morrison, completely restrict him with space and movement, and that completely nullified Falkirk. There was absolutely nothing going through. That ruined us because there was nothing on the other side. You do kind of wonder if Connolly had been fit and having one of them on either side, again, maybe could have been different. Maybe there could have been better confidence. We would have had more pace in the team as well. That never happened, and again, the club never recruited to kind of cover that position. I mean, bringing in a 17-year-old, 2 17-year-olds, that wasn't going to cut it. That was just the wrong thing to do.
At the start, Kai Fotheringham looked quite good, but I think as we went on, I think it was after the Celtic game, once we played them like the centre mid-ish, that's where I think that's where tactically Falkirk sort of fell through and just ran out of ideas, and we just went for the 4-4-2 or the 4-2-4. Because if we're chasing a game, the 2 wingers just got pushed up, but they never got a chance because it was still getting punted long. We could win headers and no one could knock it down for them.
No, I mean, again, we'll talk about Kai Fotheringham. He never had a set position in the team either for his entire loan spell. He was either at wing back away to Cove, which was just absolutely dreadful. I mean, that is one of the worst tactical blunders of all time. Put 2 of your most effective attacking players. We'll just play them at wing back. Brilliant. I never thought of that before.
Did we not beat them like 3 weeks prior, and we decided to change to the 3 at the back, in which we got hammered with?
I mean, it was just typical. Like Miller McCracken, I don't know why, but anytime it came to a slightly big game, it was defensive, and rather than play to our strengths, we tried to nullify theirs, and it just didn't fly. I mean, like I say, playing the 2, I play a 17-year-old who is not a wing back, and he's 17 years on this planet. And we'll go, I will just put him in one of the biggest games of the season. We'll play him at left wing back or right wing back, and then that obviously didn't happen. So we'll play him further up the field. We'll play him as a winger. Wasn't really working out. Then they tried to play him as a number 10. Didn't really work out. Then we'll put him on the other side. Still didn't work out. And then the poor guy never had a chance. I mean, he's delighted to be back up in Dundee United. Truly buzzing a bit. And Nelson as well. Nelson, I should say. He's probably one of the only kind of players you thought, this guy's maybe got a future. Thankfully, he's not staying at Falkirk because that's just going to be detrimental to him. Yeah. He looks a prospect, actually. And I think Dundee United fans should be quite kind of sort of enthusiastic about his progress over the next couple of years.
Who, Nielsen or Fotheringham?
Nielsen in particular. I'm not too sure about Fotheringham.
I think either or, it could swing either way. But they did all right. They did what they could. I think that's the best way you can put it.
They were coming into a losing battle. It should have been 2 or 3 experienced players, not 2 or 3 young guys coming in.
It does, certainly in the past, has been a breeding ground for perhaps making players look worse than they are. Again, Falkirk players litter the championships. They're not like star players in any team. There's a lot of them in the playoffs. A lot of the Dunfermline players. I saw Regan Timilty that looked awful for us, is kind of up there. Nikolai Todorov is the example I have. I've never seen a worse football in my life.
That's ridiculous. That is absolutely ridiculous.
He's scoring goals for Inverness Caledonia. That's all. So yeah, in terms of Miller and McCracken. So basically this has all happened throughout the season. I think you guys have raised good points about the sort of tactics not being there, them trying to sort of play to what other teams were doing, despite the fact, part-time teams, they shouldn't be as fit, therefore they should be the ones preparing for Falkirk. But we do get to the final split, which is I think is where things ultimately unravel.
Yep.
Right, so do we think things would have gone as badly if Miller and McCracken were still at the helm?
Yes.
I think it would have been similar.
They only out of their last 4 games, they managed to draw 2 each with Cove, and that was the only point they took against any of these teams. Beating 2-0 by Airdrie, beating 5-0 by Partick Thistle, what must be the worst display of the season, and then
2-1 Montrose,
Airdrie,
which then Airdrie 2-0.
2-0.
But we were robbed a goal in the Montrose game, but it's been and gone. But still, at the same time, they still would have pipped us. I think, yeah, they would have.
So, do you think the right move by the board to get Gary Holt in for the last 4 games?
No, I wasn't for it at the start. Because I think they, like, everyone was like on Twitter. You could see everyone was like, "Oh, they just got manager of the month. Why are they letting them go?" But the thing is, for that time, for Gary Holt just to come in and try to change, like, it clearly didn't work. I wasn't a fan of it to start off with. And then you should have just stuck with the 2 guys that actually know the players. I'm not saying they were good managers, but maybe they could have got them up for it for maybe a second half or something, because they built up a relationship. Whether they'd lost it, I don't know. But I think it was still it was a punt. I'm not a big fan of Gary Holt, but I said from the start, you judge him on the first game. If it doesn't go well in the first game, then that's it. We had to hit the ground running, but we didn't.
Nah, Miller and McCracken had to go. I says it in this podcast. I was like, nah, they have to. The performances were getting worse and worse. And yes, we probably would have ended up in the same position. But what was the point in prolonging the pain?
But
I know your point about Gary Holt again shouldn't be where he is in terms of running that squad. And I do get the impression that he was starting to get involved beforehand anyway, with Miller and McCracken while they were still there. So the trio were getting involved in tactics and setting up the teams and stuff. I'm convinced.
Yeah.
So it was only natural that, you know, you can get rid of Miller and McCracken. You know, good feelings or bad feelings towards them. That was the decision that had to be made. For Gary Holt to come in, yeah, I mean, fair enough, he's there to kind of cover 4 or 5 games. But by that point, you know, I think you've got to be reasonable and say that we were on a hiding to nothing. Even if we had gone to the playoffs, we weren't going up. And so it's as well just letting the kind of wipe the slate clean. Let Gary Holt take over for a couple of games, get us to the end of the season, forget this sorry mess, and start again and see what I assume he's now recruiting the new manager or head coach, whoever's going to come in, and see what happens next season.
Personally, I think there was another point they could have gained out of all that, because they were, I mean, that Partick game, everything was finished after that.
The Graham and Rudden just lit it. Like, we were lost against them because they were so confident with each other. They were genuinely, I've never seen them so confident.
But they were cresting a wave at that point. You couldn't have caught them at a worse time to be at home.
Nah.
You know, and that is why Montrose probably did so well against them in the last day of the season, because they'll have been boozing and partying.
Well, they beat Morton
as well in the playoffs. Yep. So Montrose are actually on a roll.
Yeah. But it's still to play the leg at Montrose. But they beat Morton. But they beat them 2-1.
And here we were thinking the trips to Cappy Low would end. Happy days. Totally too thrilled, John. So all that happens. Finished 5th. Well done to Montrose. Fair play. I know that they were kind of on the banter train with it all as well, like apologising to Pye and Bovril for taking their servers down and things like that. Some of the responses to some of the Falkirk FC tweets were quite funny. There was like John McGlynn looking absolutely buzzing and stuff like that, which was quite funny. Well, from a partisan point of view, I should perhaps state. So yeah, kind of on that point to the end of the season, the board then come out with that statement, which was very pro Gary Holt. You know, basically they were shocked, they were disappointed about the results, but you know, it was a losing job with all the injuries that they had and things, and they were very disappointed. So now the question is where to go from here in terms of what would you guys like to see. You know, we've had the Youth Academy start up. We might want to mention a few of the players that were released, perhaps some of the people that weren't released. And, you know, management-wise, what's the direction to go? Player-wise, what's the direction to go? Is part-time perhaps an option, you know? What do you think? John, we'll start with you.
Where to begin? Well, I mean, so on the back of the sorry but statement, it seems to have come out. That's just if you take Gary Dean's top of the tree there. There is not a hope that he'll be removed from his position. I'm kind of on the fence as to whether he should go. He's done a reasonable amount to start getting the club in the kind of right direction longer term, bringing back the academy and bringing in these the Mr. and Mrs. Rollins as kind of new investors.
Are they the Stoke City people?
They are the Stoke City people and Orlando City. Or he had, I think he established Orlando City actually as a club. Very strange, but they seem to know their way around football clubs. So if they start to take a more proactive approach in Falkirk, I'd be quite interested to see where we go with that. Similarly, I don't know how much kind of credit I would give him, but there has been under his tenure a dilution in the control of the major shareholders group, which can only be a good thing because I think they're the villains to everybody, to all Falkirk fans, I think. So it's kind of they're close to the end, I think, and that we're kind of getting to that stage. So if you think of him, fair enough. I think he won't go anywhere. His statement was it didn't quite strike the right tone. Gary Holt, as we've kind of seen in the statements and what's came out, he's staying. There's no doubt about it. He's heading up the recruitment as well for the new manager or head coach, depending on who we're going to get. Word on the street that is going to be Stuart Taylor and Peter Grant in as assistant. I've heard that in the kind of forums, which is a bit of a strange one.
Forgive me, who is Stuart Taylor?
Stuart Taylor played for Falkirk in 2003, 02-03 season, last season at Brockville.
Okay.
Goal scoring midfielder. He's had many years as a coach. I don't think he's ever been a manager, but he's been a head coach. So I get the distinct impression he's coming in to fill that vacancy as a head coach. He'll have Peter Grant, the ex-Alloa manager, who inconspicuously kind of resigned, coming in as his assistant. And I think Gary Holt, again, is going to have a hell of an influence on both the recruitment and the kind of wider structure of the playing squad. So I think those is the trio. That's what we're probably going to see next season.
Do you think he's going to go for someone that's similar, like the way that he played as a manager?
I don't know. I don't know about tactically wise, but I do think he's going to try and get someone in who, not necessarily a yes man, but a guy who's going to broadly agree, or he's going to take whatever Holt gives him, basically. That sounds like a yes man, but I think that's the kind of path we're going to go down. Gary Holt's going to kind of lead the charge. He's going to basically say, here's 20 players, pick 15 of them. And
how many do you think will get on loan from Norwich?
A few. I think
that can't be a bad thing.
Go down that route. Livingston as well. There'll be some kind of off-casts that I'm sure we'll pick up out of there.
Rafa Davita, Chodorov.
Rafa Davita got Player of the Month down at Edinburgh City.
Aye.
Wow.
I mean, I know that like when he played for Falkirk, he was useless. But is he not like a right back and then getting Player of the Month as a right back, or is he right mid? I don't know. I'm
not too sure, but I think you're on the right kind of track, though. I mean, we're going to see Gary Holt's sort of extensive or whatever kind of network he has. Peter Grant's the same. I think he's got a lot of connections with Celtic, former player and stuff like that. Again, he's going to know a few players coming out of Alloa, relegated out of contract. I think Liam Dick is being kind of talked about. Again, how can you hire recruit a player without having a manager in place?
Yep.
So he's been discussed. There is another Alloa player whose name's escaped me. Is it Hetherington? I think his name is. I've kind of seen that in the forums kicking about. So again, it's all rumours and hearsay. So I don't know if this is true. But
do you think they'd go back to full time? Because this is the problem we've got. Yeah.
Falkirk will be full time next season.
No, I know. But in terms of if we're going to try and poach players from different teams, they might be happy part time. They might not want to go full time. This is where the competition becomes a bit hazy. Especially Cove. Cove have got much better players than us in every single position. Well, 90% of the positions.
I think this is where Scottish football in particular has a really kind of weird grey area where there are very good part-time players who maybe could take the step up into full-time football to earn another 150 quid a week, but they make more money away from football. Yep. McAllister at Peterhead's a great example.
Mitch Megginson.
The Matroons manager, who I would quite like to see as the Falkirk head coach. He's part-time, and I think he makes quite a kind of good living. He's got a happy lifestyle as a part-time manager. Why would he want to move full-time into a basket case?
Yeah.
And I think Falkirk's in a really kind of awkward position where they're a, relatively speaking, a big club in a league that is full of kind of part-time players, and you kind of need the part-time experience to come in. Perhaps a hybrid model. I think Airdrie's been running a hybrid model of kind of full-time and part-time players. I don't see a problem with that. Recruitment's a bit of an issue. You're either going to have to chuck a significant amount of money at these people, relatively speaking. I'm not talking like £1,000 a week, but you're going to have to try and get these kind of guys coerced into either taking a step down a level to play full-time football, or have part-time players who are earning a fair whack away from football to move into the full-time game, which is a huge risk, and I don't know why you would do that.
See, I think it's a really interesting point, and it is a massive issue because we are now losing a lot of players out of the professional leagues down to the juniors, down to the Lowland leagues, down to the Highland leagues. This is how Cove Rangers got their start, was by picking off, like ex-Aberdeen players and, things like that, paying for good money. And you see it as well with Kelty Hearts. All those players should easily be in League 1, League 2, arguably the Championship in some cases as well.
There was one during lockdown, was it Darvel?
Yeah, I think they've been on the terrace a few times, haven't they? Because they've got new...
like fancy changing rooms. Yes, it is Darvel.
Because they've got that old Falkirk midfielder.
The boy owns the Killie Pies. I forget his name.
He's a bit of a...
McShane.
There you go.
Ian McShane.
Ian McShane's the player.
Yeah.
What decided
And
to go
then the chairman's John Gall.
I'm sure he's the one who owns the kind of maker of the Killie Pies. Is it? I forget the name.
Brownings or something like that.
Brownings the baker. That's the one. Thank you. I couldn't sleep there.
I'm glad we settled that.
Certainly that for me, thank you.
I get it's mental because I think one of the recent transfers was like Nicky Lowe, who was playing with East Stirlingshire. And now going to Arbroath. It's like, well, that's a huge leap. You've got up like 4 leagues and you're plenty capable. And it's like, how have these guys slipped through the system in that way?
Well, I think a few of them move for money. I mean, you take Kelty Hearts as a prime example of having... two off the top of my head being Nathan Austin and Callum Higginbottom.
Yeah.
Both taking the kind of step down to part-time football. Now, granted, Austin struggled in full-time football when he was at Falkirk and Inverness. But he took such a dramatic step to go all the way back down to Kelty Hearts. And then for a couple of months came all the way back up to East Fife to play back in League 1 again and scored a few goals. And now he's sort of helping Kelty get into the kind of professional leagues again.
Yeah.
So it's money that's driving those kind of wee clubs to kind of push up. And again, it's a part-time, full-time mix. I don't know, but it's obviously not for Falkirk. I mean, that's not the model longer term. But
I don't imagine we would go... I don't think we'd go hybrid, because I think the response to that would be kind of like, if we go hybrid, then there's more of a chance that we just go part-time.
Yeah, you're kind of folding the club at that point. Yep. I mean, certainly even medium term, it's a bad idea.
Except
but if you need but the thing is, if you need a few experienced players, League 1 players, to come in and do a job, again, are you really going to turn your nose up at these guys just because they're not willing to sort of train 4-5 days a week?
The thing is, it's not impossible, because they did that. I've seen the feature on like Queen's Park this season, managed to convince quite a few of their part-time guys to go full-time. Was it David Gall or something, their defender? Part-time, convinced to go full-time, did tremendously. I think did take a pay cut, so it definitely can happen. Also, the irony next season of facing Paul Hartley and Raymond McKinnon, I find utterly hilarious.
I am probably Morton as well. I mean, it's the absolute banter league next season. Like,
it is.
Houston's not still Morton manager, is he?
No, he was Morton assistant. He never went in as manager. But I think that was more just kind of like, you shouldn't have sacked him. But we're not drilling that.
Sure.
See, the thing is, I know in a lot of articles I've read recently, still pinpoint the sacking of Houston as to where this all went downhill.
But I think as soon as that happened, if you asked any Falkirk fan, they were okay with it. But the problem is, the board never backed him enough as what he should have, because he clearly proved, because he got us to a cup final, he got us into the playoff finals. Fair enough, he never got us over the line, but he was getting us to places we had no right to be.
He made it up. Blair Alston look like a good player.
I know we're kind of going over old ground. I mean, these things are in the past, and you can go what ifs. And I think that's holding the club back as well. Actually, to be fair, I mean, we're looking back and going, "Oh, we could have won the Scottish Cup. Oh, we could have won the playoffs. Oh, we could have done this and that." It's happened. Get over it.
What's going to be the slogan for this season, though? Because the slogan's always been absolutely perfect. Because our time was the time that we got relegated, and Nathan Austin was on the front of that. You had follow your leaders, which was Miller and McCracken. Didn't go very well.
Trust us, honestly.
But I think this season it might be special. It's meant to be COVID comeback. I don't know what they're going to go for.
Oh, I don't know. It doesn't be thinking about it. The marketing team have got one hell of a challenge this season to get even 1,000 season tickets.
Well, no, I think this happens every season. Like, if it goes wrong at the end, we're just kind of like, I'm not buying season tickets, blah, blah, blah. We get a couple of players in, we get the managers in, and then there's just a fresh buzz about it. And then, as soon as the first game's played, as soon as the first ball's kicked, if we get beat, everyone's just like, oh no, here we go again. But people buy the season tickets. They will. They always do.
You'll have Danny Rogers on the phone, John, selling you your season ticket. How exciting will that be?
Not a hope, honestly.
He could phone up. I remember that.
Hello, dear. It's Connor Salmon, John. I've signed a new 3-year deal. Brilliant.
I'm sure somebody did that. There was a player phoning up sort of random season ticket holders and basically saying, "Who are you exactly?"
Less than ideal. I think their signing strategy over the summer, I think the names you mentioned earlier on there, like Liam Dick, some of the Alloa guys, established guys who have got heaps of appearances in for their team, and it's a pretty safe bet. I think too often in recent seasons, Falkirk have kind of been starstruck, going for kind of names sometimes. Like the Salmon signing just had disaster written all over it from the start.
That was the marketing team, though, because he was essential towards the burger sales.
Well,
and Benny Tees.
There you go. And I was looking up Durnan's stats. But the thing is, right, I think back, and Durnan at Dundee United was not a bad centre half.
Oh, you are hovering a giraffe.
I don't think he was a bad centre half.
No, he wasn't. I don't think he was that bad.
There is not a single season Mark Durnan has had as a professional footballer that has been good.
He's knocked up over 100 appearances for Dundee United, so you don't do that by doing something wrong. Poor.
In the Championship.
Yes, and obviously when they left the Championship, he was left to go somewhere else.
It was him and what would be Edge and Gelly, I think is the two centre backs.
He worked out really well for Falkirk, John, so you can't criticise that.
Exactly,
he was brilliant.
People wonder why Dundee United were in that Championship for so long. Yeah, they're your two centre backs. Like, what did you expect?
Well, but then to that point, you look at his record with Dunfermline, and it's awful. Like, he barely played. Awful. He lasted one season, and I'm sorry, but if anyone's lasting a season at a team, they are not worth signing. And if they are worth signing, it's a risk. And I don't think Falkirk have made anyone look better than they are in recent seasons. They have not. It's not been a good incubator for any talent whatsoever.
I think Declan McManus is probably the exception to the rule, though, because he did have a really good season in what was an awful squad.
I think he would have done that anywhere, though.
Probably, but he done it at Falkirk. I mean, the principle remains that not all dreams come to die at the Falkirk Stadium.
Most do.
Escape and do better.
Most do.
It's not the dream factory at all.
No. But yeah, we'll see. In terms of the new management, that kind of screams to me like the whole Stephen Glass shenanigans that's going on at Aberdeen. Former player doesn't really know what he's doing. Will end up being a disaster somewhere down there, but it might not. You never know. They've got to make a right decision sometime, don't they?
Yeah.
Eventually, you just got to hope it's this season, because it can't honestly be another season like this. It can't happen.
But I think whoever they bring in, it has to be. It can't just be a plan for get them for a season and get us out of that league, and then we go somewhere else. It has to be. I think now especially, it has to be like a 3-year thing. They'll sit down and say we're going to do this, this, and that, and there has to. Because I don't think that's been there for Falkirk, especially like fair enough COVID and stuff like that. But there should have been like a vision. But I don't really feel that's been there with the players that we signed.
I think vision and projects are two very dangerous words that lead to more extended periods of time like this.
It's ended up with we've had egg on our face for the last 2 or 3 seasons, because we're lumbering about in League One while our boardroom are talking about Premiership football and breaking into the top 6. There is such a disconnect between the two. It's unbelievable, and that's an issue. That I think that it really doesn't help the situation. I mean, the fact that your boardroom are so far off the mark, that's to where we are right now. And that is their strategy, is to get Falkirk into the Premiership. Forget good at League One. You know, that'll take care of itself. It's Falkirk, for God's sake. We're a big club. We'll get into the Championship. Don't worry about it. And then it's all about like the Premiership Express. You know, they've completely taken their eye off the ball as to the extremity that we're in just now.
I think just be a football team, because if you gave Montrose, if you gave Airdrie, the budget that the Falkirk has just now, they would have run away with that league. So I just focus on the one thing, because I don't think anyone in there knows anything about football, judged on the decisions that have happened very, very recently. Now, the Youth Academy is back as well. Do you think that is exciting for the future?
Yeah, a little bit actually. I mean, it's something to be positive about. And this is, weirdly enough, this is actually where I'll give Gary Holt a little bit of credit, because he was able to identify Guy Fotheringham and Nielsen as two like prospects as such. So if that was his kind of recruitment, or his sort of scouting, to say these two are guys, 17-year-old good prospects, if he can do that across the academy, I think he'll win back a lot of kind of favour. And to be honest, I think that's where he should spend most of his time focusing on, and leave the first team to someone else completely and detach himself from it.
I'll be honest, I think that was Miller that got them in.
You reckon? I'm not too sure.
I'm pretty confident, because they were part of the Forth Valley Academy, and when he was trying to do the youth stuff, he'd be in and out, like even going down to work with players like that. So I think that could have been. I feel like it would more of a Miller, but it could be a Holt. We don't know.
No. I mean, either way, I mean, the club were able to identify. You could be right. I mean, I know you've considered that Miller had such an influence in that academy, and the two of them were in it, that if we can identify players like that, 16, 17-year-old, and try and get them into our academy, then happy days. That's what we want.
It's initially going to be a very hard sell to join a League One team's football academy, but if you offer these guys some maybe more game time and things like that, because the opportunity should be there.
Yeah,
you never know.
I think if we had the academy if we kept the academy this season, I believe this is a very big if. I feel like there would have been more opportunity for more competition and depth. And don't get me wrong, you're maybe pulling a player up for like 1 or 2 games, but again, once you come in for your first game, you're either going to be really nervous or you're going to hit the ground running. It just depends.
Well, I mean, Stephen Kingsley's very first appearance for Falkirk was a red card within 30 seconds. 2-footed the boy still in Albion.
Whatever happened?
He played for Hearts.
What happened? Was it Tony Gallagher?
Tony Gallagher? Is he not still Liverpool?
Is he?
He's at Liverpool.
I
I think he's in loan somewhere in League 1 or League 2.
Because at one point he was like 25, playing in the under-19s or something like that.
He's had a few first-team appearances for Liverpool in the League Cup.
He's only 21.
Well,
I don't think he'll actually become a Liverpool player by any stretch, but
he's on loan at He was on loan at Toronto FC. 9 appearances.
not bad for some.
I think that was just the biggest. It was just bonkers. Like in terms of like the Tony Gallagher rumours that were coming out, he was barely playing for the first team. He played like 1 game, and then these like the Barcelona and stuff like that. And you're just sitting there like, this is nonsense. And he plays 3 or 4 games for Falkirk, and he was absolutely rotten. He was absolutely horrendous. But the fact that he still went to Liverpool was just a shock. But again, it is just youth academy, but it's still more of a surprise. And that got us a decent amount of money.
It was the reputation of the academy that got him the move as much as himself. I mean, we watched him get absolutely bullied at Morton. Played away at Dunfermline as well, and he wasn't great.
Can I just say though, that game against Morton was like the best game I saw Falkirk play in ages, because Alex Smith just basically lined them up absolutely perfectly. And sadly, he only took on the job for a short time, and I think he is also sadly missed as well. You know, whatever he's doing, kangaroo hunting or something out in Australia.
Yeah.
Oh,
He never lost a game, did he? He never lost a game.
No,
When
he
he
hasn't
took
done
over
that.
Falkirk.
An impeccable record.
Yeah, he might as well stick with that, because
But then those
if he came in now,
are the characters you need. People who have won things. People who are respected footballers. Like, and I know that I'm sure I saw a picture of an international lineup, and Gary Holt was in it, and I was like, really? He used to be an international footballer.
Aye, he played for Scotland a couple of times. He's won the Scottish Cup. He won it with Kilmarnock against Falkirk. Which still kind of irks. I think that doesn't help his reputation as well, to be honest. There's always that kind of ill feeling towards anything Kilmarnock.
Oh, they could be coming down, so fingers crossed, eh?
Nah, they'll be staying up.
I don't know. I wouldn't be so sure. Anyway, do we fancy a wee statistical Falkirk quiz?
Let's go for it.
Yeah.
Oh, go on.
Let's cue the music. Right, so I have 6 questions. You will each receive 3, and you have to name me the player that matches the statistic. I have not lined these up in any particular order. These, I think, are vaguely correct. The statistical websites had a massive mare with the split at the end of the season. So some people were quoting 18 games, some people were quoting 22. So if there are any misinformations here, then so be it. And I think this... Well, I know. I think this is only domestic competitions as well, but they only played, 5 games in cups anyway, so, woohoo. Right, who wants to start first?
Oh, Andrew. There you go.
No, we'll see.
We'll start with Andrew, because this is a slightly easier one, and we always like to put John at the disadvantage. Which player had the most minutes played in the side this season?
I'm between Robbie Much and Cal Morrison.
Good for you.
I'll go Much.
Incorrect. It was, in fact, though, Callum Morrison.
Callum Morrison, yeah.
1,835 minutes. I thought it was depressing that a 21-year-old was just the complete focus of this team. Do you want to guess who the second most player was, John?
It probably would have been Robbie Much.
I think it was Blair Alston.
Robbie Much got sent off.
And PG Morrison would have been in for a bit of the season as well.
Yeah, I forgot about him.
So, Blair Alston was second. Right, John, to you. Who was the player subbed off most this season? Who was the player that was subbed off most this season?
Who that came off the most?
10 times he was subbed off. 22 games, that's quite a lot.
Sucks to be there, eh? I'm going to go Robbie Leach.
Oh, how does he do it? Ding there. Robbie Leach was subbed off 10 times. Yeah. Wow, well done.
He's rubbish. He's rubbish. He's rotten.
Well, he must have got a few starts if he was subbed off so often.
No, but he did. He was either an impact sub or he was on... Again, he was another one with no position. He either played behind the striker, played him centre mid, played him out wide, but I mean, there was nothing anywhere. I can't name a time that I thought he played well, but he's...
Oh well. Back to you then, Andrew. Who would be the most likely person to come on for him? Who was the most subbed on player for Falkirk this season?
And it's not Robbie Leach.
Well, I mean, he can't be subbed off and subbed on, Andrew. So, I'm not giving you clues here, but,
Right. Most subbed on?
13 times this player was subbed on.
Okay.
I'm totally not keeping track of scores. Hold on. John got 1.
Subbed on? This is tough. This is a tough one. It's not Scott Mercer. It has to be a midfielder above. Subbed on?
Yes, it's literally the question.
I'm gonna go Connor Salmon.
John, would you like to try and steal?
I'm going to say Anton Dowds.
Incorrect.
Kira.
Akil Francis.
Oh, he's rotten. He's the worst. There was nothing. No, I don't like him.
He was quite fast, wasn't he?
Aye, very good. He could run in a straight line. So could Denon Lewis, and he was useless. They went down south, and he was just like, "Oh, let's go on Love Island." Akil Francis next. Right, next.
Okay, I'm the quizmaster here. Chill out. Jonathan, I think this is a fairly slam dunk one. Who received the most bookings this season? And
That's quite easy.
I need a fully correct answer.
Morgano Gomez.
Not a fully correct answer. Andrew, would you like to steal?
You're going to say Margaro Gomez and Dunnan.
Yes, it's correct. Both players. Andrew, you get the point there. Or shall I give you 2 points because you named the two players?
I'll accept the 2 points. And another point I'd like to make is Margaro Gomez got sent off for diving in the centre circle. So it was a second yellow, and he dived in the middle of the park. We weren't going to get a great free kick out of it. He dived, he got sent off.
I think the keeper was also sent off at one point as well, as you said. So
Yep.
there wasn't as many interesting stats. I'm sure in our quiz a few years ago, Aaron Muirhead just had the most hilarious statistics known to man in terms of bookings and sending offs and things.
Yep.
But the nature of the truncated seasons means it's not exciting. Right, who was the player with the second least minutes of action that actually featured? So, who was the player with the second least minutes that actually featured?
So, second
Totaling
least.
87 minutes of play.
87, right. So, we are going to have to look down the route of Aidan Lafferty or Aidan Connolly. I'm going to say Aidan Lafferty.
John, would you like to steal?
Lee Miller.
Correct.
Oh,
Correct. We are balanced up at 2 points each. Okay. It was Lee Miller, 87 minutes. Right. Question 6 then, John, to unfortunately steal and win the game. This player was named on the bench a record 17 times this season without playing a domestic minute, according to the statistical website.
Can't believe the bloody sub-goalkeeper. What's his name? Or maybe not. Or maybe
it's not
not.
Cantley. No, Cantley came in as a loan, did he not?
I'm going to steal your answer. Maybe Aidan Laverty.
Aidan Laverty is the correct answer. John wins the 2021 Falkirk FC miserable statistical quiz 3-2.
Yes.
Now, Andrew, you've clearly put all your cash to waste watching all these games.
Fuck. Should have spent on
missing
football tops.
Exactly. Missing out on Aidan Laverty, 0 minutes. I think he went on loan to Brecon and didn't really play there, came back. He has now been one of the players that's been released. Gomez, 4 bookings. He is leaving as well, isn't he?
Yeah, he's released.
Yeah,
I
he's
would be
gone.
surprised if he even continued to play football, to be honest.
Oh, well, you'll be pleased to know, John, that who was it I was telling you was playing for Brecon City the other day? Was it Osman?
Abdul
Osman.
Osman.
So he's still available. Can't even get a game for Brecon City, which is a problem.
He's got his own clothing brand. Represent.
He's going to make it.
I'm sure the Brecon market is ecstatic for that. But yeah, my tiebreaker was going to be who has been the top scorer for Falkirk in the modern time, so in the last 10, 15 years.
Ooh. I'm trying to think who was the longest serving, so it'd either be Sibbald or John Baird.
Nope.
Nah. It'll either be Farad or Lyle Taylor. I'm going to say Lyle Taylor.
I believe it to be Blair Alston, apparently.
Away. What?
I don't know how far back the records go. I didn't see Farad's name because I was trying to find where these guys would rank up in terms of top scorers. But the statistics for Falkirk on all websites are currently awful because people seem to have given up after 2018-19 when they were relegated at the Championship. So the Wikipedia article hasn't been updated for 2 or 3 years. Maybe they're delusional. I don't know, or they're just waiting to go back into the Championship. But Blair Austin was at the top of those lists with 40 something goals or something.
39.
Yeah, that makes more sense. I don't think anyone would have more than that, to be honest.
Because you've got Craig Sibbald 38, John Baird 37. Number 4, the finest striker, who was the laziest man. I'd rip for about 60 minutes and he'd always score. Rory Light.
Good lad.
Yeah.
He did. He was in Sportstown for the Partick game.
Was he?
Yeah.
Oh, that would have been, yeah. Yeah. This is quite embarrassing, to be honest, if you just look at the list. Michael Higdon, 14. Miles Hippolyte, 15.
He was
Connor Salmon.
alright-ish.
Connor Salmon is number 18 with 14 goals.
Jesus Christ.
Since he's been there for so long now.
You've got the left back, Luke Lee, 12 goals.
Every single one of them was a screamer, though.
They were. Mark Miller got 21 from centre mid. Anthony
you're
Stokes with 14.
You're just depressing me, man. Like, this is...
Will Vaulks with 14 as well. He's rumoured to
come
go to
on,
Newcastle.
come on. I hope he does. That'd be cracking.
I know. And the most recent ones that have popped up, Swansea signed Falkirk starlet Blair, Ryan Blair, and Swansea signed Botty Viavi.
Both of them at Stenny.
They both now play Stenny.
What could have been?
But, aye, the glory days. McManus with 23. Number 8. Carl Finnegan as well. But we'll not dwell on the past. We'll look at the future with Blair Alston being up the top.
There you go. Who didn't really reach those glorious heights. So I think we can all agree if there was a season for fans not to be there, this was probably the one.
Yep.
And with any luck, hopefully fans will be back in the stadium after the summer, and from there on out. Events seem to be happening now, so there's some of the music festivals and things like that. So every chance. Falkirk Stadium also has plenty of seats to place the. What's like the bare minimum that Falkirk usually always get like 1,500? Well, no, I'm not talking about the quoted attendance, because the quoted attendance is always total nonsense. Assuming that all. Well, I used to be there and be shocked at the 3,500 people that were there, and I'd like a 10th filled 7,000 seater stadium.
Scottish version of Leeds United does. Like, millions and millions of fans Falkirk have. Come on.
I don't know. But we'll see. I think people will still walk through the doors. My bold prediction for next season is they will finish in the playoff places. I don't know if they'll win the league. But without Partick, that's the main competition gone. But they have struggled against Cove this season. They could get stronger again. Who knows?
You can't comment until you see who the manager in the squad is, to be honest. You're just trading on a name.
Well, everyone will have to tune in for our preview show at the start of next season.
Buzzing.
For that information, we've always been wildly wrong with those predictions. And we look forward to seeing Greenock Morton back at the Falkirk Stadium and Queen's Park. Raymond McKinnon and his, best of greatest hits of a football squad. But yeah, here's hoping fans are back in stadiums, and here's hoping that Falkirk fans get some reward for the pain that they have suffered for the last 10, 11, 12, 13...
That's plenty.
14 years. Exactly. Some success is needed. Even a cup win, like a challenge cup or something like that. Just to get them kicking on and get them going. Is there anything else we've not added this week? Is there anything that we've kind of not gone over review-wise? Any message you might have for the board of directors? Any messages you might have for the fans, for the players?
Keep it up. You're doing a great job.
Stay positive, guys. There's no losers in this game.
Hey!
Everyone gets a medal.
There you go. Well, there is that exciting opportunity of a question and answer session coming up.
Over
Zoom.
Mute.
Yeah, I've got what was it, like the Farnsforth Council meeting or something like that, or what was it? The Jackie Weaver stuff where you have no authority.
Was that not like churches or the councils? Was it? It was councils.
Yeah, I think it was like the Handforth County Environmental meeting or something. But we look forward to that anyway. I suppose it'll be a big thank you to everybody listening from myself, Paul.
All the best, guys, from John.
Dreams can come true.
Well,
I kind of was going to say, I kind of don't want to speak after that. I kind of want that to be the last word. The last 5 minutes of this episode will just be Andrew saying that on a loop to get you through the summer months. And we'll be back in the next few weeks. Cage Match will be back as a feature. We'll be discussing the goings-on in the rest of the playoffs, the run-in of the Premiership season, and the Scottish Cup games as well. So be sure to subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, all places where you would usually get your podcasts. And it is a good evening, a good afternoon, and a good morning from me. Goodbye.